My name is Herbert S. My rank was Tech Sergeant. I was flight engineer gunner on a B-24 that flew out of 446 Bomb Group, 705th Squadron from Bungay, England. On September 26, 1944, we were slated to go to our last mission, which was our 30th mission, and that was called a tour of duty. From there, you were supposed to go back home to the States. That day, we were bombing a place called Hamm, H-A-M-M, in the Ruhr Valley of Germany, which they said had plenty of anti-aircraft protecting the bomb where we were supposed to bomb. That day, it was my job to get the rest of the crew up because I was in charge of the non-commissioned officers. They were all in my barracks. So I had to get them all up in order to go down to have chow. And at 3 o'clock in the morning, we all got up and went down and stood on line, and actually in the middle of the night, waiting to get something to eat. Well, it took quite a while to finally get something to eat. We had powdered eggs, powdered milk, everything was powdered we had. And we had jam. The English loved jam. The English always had jam for us. Well, after that, we went down to briefing, which was another building. And in briefing, you find out what target you were going to bomb that day, your particular group. Other groups had other targets. Nobody ever was kept a secret. And when you walked into the room where all the rest of the servicemen were, you sat down and they would have a big map on the wall. And then they would have a cover over the map, which they went and pulled the cover out, and it showed you the bomb room, the target you were on today. That's when we found out we were going to Hamm, Germany. It was a little commotion around and so forth because there was a lot of other crews there too that went to these different targets, and they knew that how much protection was around with any aircraft at these bases. So from there, we got on trucks and we went out to our plane. Each airplane had 4 mechanics work on it all night long to get it ready to go on the mission. My job as engineer, I would have to pre-flight the airplane, and I had a checklist where I would go and check the oil, I would check the tires, I would check the controls and so forth, that everything is in a working condition. Then I had to sign it. And I better make sure when I signed it that that was the case. Then the officers came out, and the pilot talked to us for a few minutes, and so forth, and we were kind of late that day. Why, I don't know, taking off. We all got in a position, everybody on the plane, there's 10 men to a crew. And when we got on the plane, we all got into our positions. And I got into my position, but I did not get it up into the top turret, which I flew. I stood between the pilot and co-pilot, and the radio operator had no turret at all. He just manned the radio, which was a big job to start off with. So from there, then the pilot, the word was go. So all the planes started their engines up. They were all lined up in a row, started their engines up one after another. And when all those planes, it was quite a roar. If there was anything behind us, it would have been blown for miles because of the prop wash from those engines. So then you get worried to taxi out. The pilot does, to go ahead and line up near the runway, not on the runway, and a pilot check the plane out again. And you take off at intervals. So when it's your turn to come, the ground crew gives signals and the pilot would taxi to the runway, and then they would say go, and they would take off. So we took off that day, and we had a very good takeoff. Sometimes you don't have a very good takeoff because you have crosswinds. It was pretty calm that day. So what happened was you have to go, then from there, the plane starts gaining altitude. And then you have to gain altitude over England and form your formation of your squadron on the flight, which was 36 airplanes altogether. Now, we started across the channel, English Channel, and everybody felt good because this was supposed to be our last mission. Well, it was our last mission in a different way. When you above altitude, you have to, above 10,000 feet, you have to wear oxygen because the air gets so thin, and you put your oxygen mask on. And when we got over the channel, I had to get into my turret. That's when I had to get into the turret. And I climbed into my turret, and the sun was shining down. It was a very hot sun that day, but clouds below us. We had heavy leather fleece line clothes on. Also, what we wore these heated suits. They were like pajamas with wires in it. And we plugged them into the circuit that we had on our turret. You had a rheostat to control it. Now that rheostat was that it was hard for me, top turret, because you would get creases in here, and you would get creases in your arm where the stuff would fold over, and it would make hot spots. So I had the sun beating down on me, and I had these hot spots here and in my arms. So I really had to cut it way back. So in the cabin, the temperature up there could be 30 degrees below zero. Now, these planes are not heated. That's the only heat you have in the whole plane. So, but you got used to it after a while. It was one of those things.
So you were facing the extremes of cold, the extremes of heat, plus enormous amounts of noise around you. So your senses were under attack.
Yeah, well, you don't hear too much noise from the other airplanes. You hear it from your own, and we were crossing the English Channel that day, and they said it would be clear over the target, except some low clouds that were down about 3,000 feet. So we got up, started to climb, and we climbed up to 22,000 feet. We flew over the channel, and on the way there, it's always a radio silence. In other words, nobody can get on the intercom and talk because the radio operator had radio silence. They didn't want to have anybody get into anything anybody would say out of line, and then the Germans would pick it up. When you go on a mission and you go on what they call the bomb run, or the IP, they called it, the bombardier took over the controls through his bomb sight, and he controlled that plane through his bomb sight to have a heading to go in and finally drop your bombs. So he dropped his bombs, and as soon as he dropped his bombs, seconds later, we got hit by enemy aircraft. We got a hole in the bomb bay, which is where the catwalk is, and the gas was leaking out. We lost 2 engines, one on one side and one on the other side. My job was to go ahead and feather the props. I had to come out of my turret and feather the props so those props would not run away, as they call it, and fly into the airplane and kill, which did happen, has killed different people, come back, co-pilot, pilot, mostly up in the front of another airplane. So that was my job. What happened also, we had our oxygen. Our oxygen was shot out. We also had hydraulic fluid, which took care of our bomb bay doors, our wheels, all the stuff like that to land with, controls. Well, we dropped from about 23,000 feet down to about 18,000 feet because we only had 2 engines. But we already dropped the bombs, which we were lucky. And finally, the pilot, we had wounded aboard, and the wounded was the left waist gunner. He had shrapnel go through his arm and come out one side to the other side. So the pilot asked on intercom, anybody wounded aboard? And they said, yeah. His name was Bush, is wounded. So he sent the navigator back to take care of his wound and give him morphine. And they gave him morphine and they pushed him, tied him to the static line so his chute would open. He wore a chest chute just like I wore and everybody else, except maybe the pilot and the co-pilot. They wore a back chute or a chute that they sat on because they couldn't have the chute in front of them here while they're flying the plane. So they got him out, and finally all the rest of them got out. What happened was the plane was not flying very well. Pilot and co-pilot had, and finally he told the co-pilot to go. So all were left in the airplane was myself, my radio operator, Bill Booth, and our pilot, John Mullery. What happened was Bill went down on the catwalk to go out. And we put one foot out. He was in a sitting position, put one foot out, then put another foot out, like he was testing the waters down at the shore. What happened was I yelled, Bill, will you go? I kept yelling it. And then I finally hit him on the back a few times, real hard as I could. Finally, I took my hand and I pushed him out. Well, I was lucky because he would have went down with that airplane. See, we never trained to bail out of an airplane. We were given lessons on it, but we never trained. So that would be our first jump to save your life. And hoping that the chute opens.
So, and I believe you said that the pilot was inquiring as to whether there's a chance they could land.
In between, he asked the navigator to give him a heading to take the plane back to England. And I got on the intercom and I said, John, there's no way this plane's going to make it. You know that no better than I that this plane is not going to make it the condition it's in. So we decided that go ahead, that we should all bail out. Well, then I bailed out, and then I found out later on my pilot bailed out. He dove from the front to right through the bomb bay to get out of the airplane because the airplane was in very bad shape. It blew up on the way down. So that would have been, if we would have stayed with the plane, I wouldn't be talking with you today. So when I bailed out, about 18,000 feet, I was coming down in a sitting position, and I had my legs above my head. And I was trying to turn around, and so I would be coming down in a straight position. course, you're going about 130 miles an hour before you pull the ripcord. So I couldn't get myself to turn around. Well, the ground was coming up close. I heard a dog barking down there. So I figured I better go ahead. It's just seconds before I'm going to get killed, hit the ground. So I pull the ripcord, and we have a harness on that goes around your neck and also around your groin. And I didn't have it too tight around the groin, so I took a heck of a shot there. But I made it down on the ground, but I wasn't paying attention because you don't think you're going as fast with the chute open, but it's almost like somebody is throwing the ground up at you, and you're not hitting the ground, but they're throwing it at you. So I landed on my left leg hard, and I found out later on I didn't break anything, but my foot swelled up, my left foot swelled up quite a bit. I found out later on tendons, it ripped a lot of tendons in there.
So you were there, so when you landed, you were in a lot of pain?
Well, when I hit the ground, I was in a lot of pain, yes, after I hit the ground. And then the chute started to drag me along with the wind. It didn't collapse completely yet. And then finally it did. And then all of a sudden, I see somebody out of my eye. It was on a farmland. So I come out of this farmhouse, a young girl, maybe in her 20s, come over and say, Americana, Americana? And I shook my head, yeah, Americana. Well, I think she was trying to maybe take me and get some help from somebody that's in that farm, try to hide me. But this was Germany, this was not France. They did that a lot in France. And if she ever accomplished that, if the Germans ever found me, they would have killed the family for harboring an American, especially an airman. I mean, airmen were on the top of the list because don't forget, we bombed. People on the ground had to kill soldiers and stuff. Where we bombed, civilians got killed too besides. Meantime, a German soldier.
Well, before you get to the German soldier, just tell me who the girl was. I believe you said she was a Polish girl. Tell me who the girl was.
She was Polish, I think. She was Polish, yeah.
Okay. All right, go ahead, pick it up with the German soldier.
German soldier came. I was about maybe a quarter of a mile away from the road on this farm. A German soldier came over from the road, and first thing he asked me if I had a gun. He says, gun, gun, gun. Maybe he put my arms up, and he frisked me all down, my whole body, to see if I was hiding a gun. At one time, we used to carry Colt 45s. We were trained on that gun, too. And the thing is that I had no gun. So I don't know what I would have done with it anyway. I wouldn't have tried to shoot the whole German army with it. But anyway, I went out to the street with him, and my leg was really starting to get bad. And we got out on the street, and there was a bunch of civilians there. And they were going to try to kill me, I guess, because, you know, we just bombed very close to where they live, and who knows what would happen. Well, I had a wristwatch on my left arm that was given to me by my grandmother when I graduated from Dumont High School. She gave me a wristwatch, and an expensive wristwatch. You mentioned it.
I believe you said it was a Rolex.
Yes, Rolex. Yeah.
So it wasn't any kind of, it was a nice,
Yeah.
nice watch.
Yeah.
And what happened?
Well, in the meantime, some soldiers came over, and the Wehrmacht, they call them, and they protected me. In the meantime, down the road comes a soldier in a motorcycle. And on the motorcycle, he had a sidecar. And they made me get in the sidecar, so forth, and he took off. Well, I don't know, he must have come out of an insane asylum because he rode down that road. It was not busy at all. It was a back road, 2-lane road. And he'd yell at everybody in his way. He'd yell, stand up on the motorcycle to get out of his way. So, holy crow, I thought, what does he get, $1,000 a soldier for something? Well, we got into this town. There was a borough hall with a lot of steps to go up. And hanging, of course, from the borough hall was a big swastika. And there was German youth soldiers, I don't know what they call them again.
And that was kind of like, it had become kind of like a processing center for prisoners, correct?
Not necessarily, no. Because you got to remember is that everybody's shot down in different parts and they bail out in different parts. And land could land 5 miles away from you, land in trees, and so forth. So it was just that was a town hall, you know what I mean? Just like here, Cresskill, one, Dumont, another one. Well, it just happened to be I landed, he took me to that one.
Okay.
I was probably the closest one.
Okay.
And got out of the sidecar, and he took me up the steps into the town hall, borough hall, town hall, I'm not sure. When I got inside, there was about 4 or 5 men. They were not soldiers, they were civilians. And they looked at my dog tags. Now, you know, you have it on there about my dog tags. And on my dog tags, I had H for Hebrew. And they know what that is. So they started to question me. Some could speak part English. And I didn't answer them. So they hit me, bruised me hit me on the arm, hit me across the head, pushing me on the floor, kicking me, and kept yelling, Judy, Judy, Judy. That in German, it's Jewish. And then what happened was they took me over to a door. It was about 6 or 7 flights of stairs. And they pushed me down the steps. In there, I was in there for 4 or 5 days, I don't remember. They gave me a little water and a little bread to eat. And that's about it. There was a little light there. Then they brought me up, so forth, put me on a truck. No, they put me on another Jeep. And from there, they took me to what they call a clearing center for POWs, no matter if you're American, English, Air Force, ground crew, whatever. Big place, tremendous place.
And this whole time, you're not handcuffed,
No. Well, there's no way you could do anything. You know, you can't fight them. You're in their mercy. In other words, you have no rights.
Right.
You know what I mean?
You're injured, you're surrounded, so there's no point in handcuffing you, are you saying, because you can't get away?
No. Well, in the clearing center, they took us out. We only stayed there a short while, and we wasn't interrogated. Then we were sent to an old German prison. They used to hold regular prisoners before that. They had cells, regular cells with bars on it. They put me in a room by myself, and that's when I finally met up with my crew. And all the crew was there together.
What was your feeling at the time when you finally saw them? Did you think they were dead, or you had no idea?
Well, you have no idea, you know, nobody wants. Once you leave that airplane, nobody knows, you know, unless you actually come down together or close by, you see, oh, you know, that's one of your crew. And other planes are being shot down too, so you don't know. It can't, you know, a distance away, so forth. You don't know.
What was your feeling when you saw them?
You know, we were delighted we were alive, just being alive and so forth. And my pilot, he was glad. He was glad, my pilot was glad that he was shot down. The reason why is he never liked to fly the B-24. He had a hard time with the plane, and he come from Memphis, Tennessee. He had dark, kinky hair. He was half Italian and half Irish. His hair turned completely white, and he was glad that he was, at least he didn't have to fly that airplane again. But that was only him, though, because he...
You're saying in his time in the military, his hair turned white during the...
From the mission.
Wow, okay. From the stress?
He was a little gray, but after that...
From the stress?
From the stress of flying the plane.
Wow, it's amazing.
One in the town hall, one out interrogations. And they took me to another place where I was interrogated. Well, that was where the cells were. You know, I told it we were in. And each one of us were taken up to be interrogated one at a time. And they took me in this room, and they had a small table about as big as a card table, and on the other side sat this German officer, which could speak very good English. And he handed me some papers to sign. So I signed name, rank, and serial number. That's all you're told to do. I gave him the papers back, and he got very mad at me. And he says, I want you to fill the whole thing out. And I said, I shook my head. All I did was shook my head. He really got mad. He said, well, he says, I could have you sent to Siberia and you'll never get back home. Well, when I wouldn't sign, he called somebody in, a soldier, with a book about the Geneva Convention. And it had a lot of things in there that didn't belong in there. So I just gave him the book back, and he walked out. And he was getting mad, I could see. And I'm saying to myself, here's a 23-year-old boy, you know, captured in a foreign country, being Hebrew. What the hell is going to happen to me? I better shut my mouth. But I wouldn't cooperate, though. So what happened was, he started to tell me all about my bomb group. He started telling me where our mission was, how many men we had on board plane. He knew more than I did. So I told him. I says, well, he says, tell you the truth, I won't tell you, but one of your men signed everything. So that's when they took me out of there. That was that briefing there.